Have you experienced serious complications with a Paragard IUD, like breakage or fracture? You're not alone. Keller Postman is here to help. Tap the banner now for a free case review. We're helping women hold manufacturers accountable. If eligible, you may be entitled to compensation of up to $200,000. Don't wait. Tap now or visit iudinjury.com/audio to see if you qualify. Your health matters, and justice is within reach. Tap the banner or visit iudinjury.com/audio to get started today. This is attorney advertising.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 2025, as we record this episode. We enter the last week of spring training, and for most of you, you are either listening or watching this episode while the Chicago Cubs and Los Angeles Dodgers start the 2025 regular season in Tokyo. In this show, the Chicago White Sox announced their opening day starter, and it's not the Dart, Davis Martin. Instead, it's Sean Burke, who will join special company in Major League Baseball history. As a matter of fact, it's the first time this has happened in my lifetime. Plus, more injury news for the White Sox as Josh Rojas has a bad toe, while Andrew Benintendi starts taking batting practice. Joey Gallo is going to be a pitcher. And on St. Patrick's Day, if you could grant one White Sox player, position player or pitcher, and give them a 50-point boost to either their weighted runs created plus or ERA plus, who would you pick? Joining me from Glendale, Arizona is Sox Machine beat reporter James Fegan, and from Nashville, Tennessee, managing editor Jim Margulis. And hello, gents. Jim, Sox Machine 3.0 has officially launched.
Thank goodness. Now I can, aside from some small tweaks to make here and there as people use the site and report either just small bugs or improvements that can be made, I can kind of get back to the editorial parts, which is what I've been looking forward to the most out of this whole thing is shedding the tech support, being the IT guy, and being more of the getting more back into words, which I prefer. So far the response has been positive in terms of cleaner look, no issues, having login durations, everything like that. And I'm grateful. One of the things that was difficult to tell with last season was separating how bad the White Sox were from just how frustrating the experience sometimes was with the Patreon login. I appreciate everybody who endured the oddities of the Patreon process and just the third-party nature of it and being an imperfect solution. This should be a lot better, should be a lot easier to promote, and while advertising like a satisfying user experience. And I'm looking forward to just putting all the friction behind and having a lot smoother of a site interaction for everybody.
And again, a reminder for monthly subscribers to Sox Machine, instead of what I normally have been saying since 2018, go to patreon.com/Sox Machine to sign up. No, go to soxmachine.com and sign up there. That's how we're doing it moving forward. So again, if you're a monthly subscriber, no more third parties. If you are a monthly subscriber, go to soxmachine.com, re-enter your payment information so you continue having access to all of our coverage, especially James's coverage down in spring training. And speaking of James being in spring training, some news broke as White Sox manager Will Venable named his opening day starter for the Chicago White Sox. And it's not the Dart, as I mentioned in the intro, it's Sean Burke gets the opening day start. James, why Sean Burke?
I think it's a coordinated effort to spite your nickname launching efforts. I kind of tipped Davis off to it. He seemed lukewarm on it, and everything's kind of unraveled for his campaign ever since.
I just want to state for the record, so is Chris Sale about the Condor, and damn it, that got on his baseball reference page.
I don't think he was the same level of same level of ornery at all. Well, to talk to Ethan Katz about it today, um, he just kept citing like Sean Burke's platoon splits. Like this is the right-handed lineup, and he struck out. He had like basically a perfect strikeout to walk ratio in the majors against them last year. I The theory I've offered is kind of, and they've been receptive to it. Like, yeah, that's functionally true. It's like Burke's the highest upside starter in the rotation. If you're looking at somebody who would have the sort of like overpowering fastball or just kind of the stuff profile where if the command took a leap or if the changeup and sinker really helped him use both sides of the plate and give him a wider margin of error. Like this is someone who has like the raw stuff to be like a number 2 or number 3 starter in a way that this kind of collection of crafty guys, like even including Martin in that, like there's just not the same ceiling for what it can do for someone who's basically pitching around their fastball. And like as much as I say pitching around their fastball, like Burke is as much of a dyed in the wool, like I want to throw my fastball 35% of the time as everyone else on the staff is. It's just he has maybe that extra gear to power his way out of like tough situations when other things that aren't working in a way that I don't think like the rest of the staff is really capable of doing. Or like if you're looking for someone like who can be our best starter if everything clicks, I think Burke probably has a bit more of upside, whereas Martin's probably a bit more probability because you've seen the level of strike throwing you immediately need to see, the level of adjustability to probably have a bit more confidence about how it's going to look in the rotation, or how even a bad or kind of middling Davis Martin season would look in the rotation, being something passable. Whereas, Burke, very little track record. Like it was just, the end of last July that he was not getting out of the first inning in AAA. Now he was rehabbing a shoulder injury pretty much at that time, but it's more just to illustrate like it's been a very tight window of seeing it all kind of coming together for him. Really, since after like his draft year, it's been kind of like choppy. Like that's when things kind of started getting up and down. So I think it's not quite on the Garrett Crochet level of like, you'll see this guy really has this stuff.
Yeah.
It's going to become apparent right away why we view this guy as like kind of a step above, but it's more maybe a slight edge. And it's someone who they felt like has had a good spring in terms of asking, doing what they've asked of him, as far as adjustments, being open to the sinker as much as he is. Martin Perez was not joking about being happy about cracking 90 the other day in the spring training game. Don't know him well enough to know his sense of humor, but it also seemed like it was important. So yeah, it's just not the same kind of guys filling out the rest of the rotation. And Burke is kind of that traditional, big tower power right-handed forcing guy. And I can get why he's a step above, but it also obviously says a lot about the organization. Someone who's thrown 19 innings, someone who wasn't in Major League spring training last year, that to be even very early on the road of realizing what's hopefully, front of the rotation potential, is still like, yeah, you're open to a starter. Like it feels like a couple of years ago, Kopech was probably a much more lauded version of this guy of like, yeah, we think he has the stuff to be really good. But it's kind of his first year doing this full time. And he was kind of the Sox like number 3 or number 4 starter on a 2022 team that obviously wasn't that good in the end, but you weren't seeing someone so early in their journey in the rotation being thrust into such a kind of a big spotlight. And the spotlight's not as big playing the Angels in March. It's not going to be a packed house. It's not going to be the most difficult matchup he's ever faced. It's kind of curated for that, but it does speak to like kind of the state of the team a little bit. Not in a to besmirch Sean Burke, but like this very early, very very light in the professional credentials to get this kind of nod.
In the spring, Sean Burke in 3 starts, 8 2/3 innings, a 4.15 ERA, 9 hits allowed, 6 strikeouts to 5 walks. And for ESPN, Sarah Lane, she had a very interesting nugget of information. Sean Burke will be the 7th pitcher in the last 100 years to start opening day, having thrown fewer than 20 innings in the prior season. The last to do it was back in 1981. Fernando Valenzuela of the Los Angeles Dodgers started opening day for them. despite only throwing 18 innings in the previous season. So, Jim, it's clear Sean Burke is going to have a Fernando Valenzuela type of season for the Chicago White Sox. Go on and win the American League Cy Young. I'm kidding, but go ahead and knock yourself out, Sean. That'd be pretty awesome to watch. Jim, do you like the pick by Will Venable, new White Sox manager, going with Sean Burke on opening day?
Well, I'm trying to think of the other tweet as well, saying that Burke was like the first opening day starter to throw. I'm trying to think what it was, like fewer than 3 starts or something like that. And Garrett Crochet was the previous one. So right now his peers are Garrett Crochet and Fernando Valenzuela. So I think that's pretty solid territory. I mean, it did work last year. So in the words of Pedro Grifol, they're doubling down.
We're still quoting Pedro.
Okay. Yeah. I think the only 2 choices I think that would have been like inspiring were Burke and Davis Martin. I think Martin would have been the safer choice in terms of being around more. I mean, like Martin Perez has the veteran appeal, but like if you're talking about, symbolism or, planting a flag, trying to get people excited about the next good White Sox rotation, like he's not going to be part of that. Burke stands a better chance of being a fixture than Perez. So that's why I think like he's better in terms of if he has a really good start, this is the future of something, versus if Martin Perez has a good start in opening day, it's like, hey, cool. He might be traded for like another William Bergoya. Although Bergoya is raking this spring. So maybe that's that more of him, please. But, otherwise Jonathan Cannon, based on the spring he's having, not so much. Fifth starter.
We'll talk about Cannon in a moment.
It's a 2-horse race right now. And you're going to have Shane Smith, Rule 5 pick, be the opening starter. Although that would be awesome. In terms of really just going for it, really owning the state of the team, just saying, Rule 5 pick. Not only are we keeping him, he's our opening day starter. And then you just like watch the money lines tank or whatever. But I think, there are only 2 real valid choices, I think, and they picked one of them.
So how do we think the rest of this rotation is going to shake out, James? For those that are watching the video, we are taking a look right now. If Sean Burke is the opening day starter, Davis Martin, I assume is safe. Martin Perez, I assume is safe. 3 reasonable names to fill out the last 2 spots in the rotation: Shane Smith, Jonathan Cannon, and Bryce Wilson. What are you hearing, James? How could the other 2 spots be filled by the White Sox?
I'm not hearing like abandon ship on Jonathan Cannon.
Okay.
Kind of asked about his spring today with Cats. He said they feel like it's mostly a command and location issue. They don't think his stuff is backed up or is out of whack. Cannon didn't seem happy post game, but also didn't seem like lost for answers or perplexed or kind of derailed in confidence. They've been staking him out as like someone they believe as the future rotation piece for a while. I think even if like what he's going through right now, and probably going to do it more later, but proves to be intractable, I think he gets a couple starts to work it out. I think he has to kind of hit the rocks in April for them to be like, all right, well, we need to pause on something. So I think that really just leaves it towards between Shane Smith and Bryce Wilson. And they kind of are already comfortable. Well, one, like Smith I don't think he clipped either around 100 innings last year or like it was just short of it, I believe. So putting him in the rotation has the general expectation that you can't really expect much more than 120 out of him. So that could include skip starts or extra days of rest regularly, or this, that, and the other, or shifting him to the bullpen at some point for long relief. So they kind of view it as a very nebulous distinction between like him and Bryce Wilson necessarily, because like kind of like we're gonna get starts out of both of them eventually, especially because like a front of a rotation is Davis Martin and Sean Burke, both guys who basically haven't pitched a whole lot in the last 2 seasons. It's not as strict as like Crochet, where it's like he's never been a starter professionally at all, or he has no use to this routine at all. So we're going to just completely like be really strict about it, but it's going to have some of those mechanisms for guys who probably project right now to be the top 2 producers in the rotation. And I'm sure that could change. Maybe Cannon's just like killing it in June, and this conversation seems silly, but like that's a big hearty rotation that's in that bucket of like, can we really push them much beyond 120? So even if Wilson is like in the number 6 role, it's something you anticipate with a lot of use. The same could be true for Tyler Gilbert if he goes in the rotation or in the bullpen early, or as opposed to the AAA rotation. So I don't think they view it as like this really thick wall between like the 5th slot and the 7th slot. Uh,
Okay.
that said, I'd lean towards thinking Shane Smith kind of gets rewarded for what he's doing, because kind of for the same reason as Burke. Like, Bryce Wilson is here on a 1-year deal. Like, maybe it could be more. I think he's arbitration eligible again, but like it's not someone who has this same runway of like, hey, this might be a really big piece if we figure something out with him, the way, essentially rookies would be. So I think with Smith looking as good as they are, as enthusiastic as they are about his changeup, as enthusiastic as they are about anybody they've given a new changeup this spring, I think he fits into what they're kind of doing a bit more than uh, more work around the edges they were doing with Wilson. As much as they kind of talked up the arm slot change with him, they also like say like, oh, it's just a little thing, gives a little bit more movement. It's not like, oh, this is a whole new dude.
Yeah.
So I would lean towards Smith kind of rounding it out, but they're also not really committing to using Smith in the first turn of the rotation. They have the off days to kind of duck it without even necessarily putting a ton on like Sean Burke or having him work extra. So he could be held back or just like in the bullpen. There's a lot of permutations from the fact that they're not really forced to have a starting 5 from the jump.
Yeah, they may not need a 5th starter into the middle of April, either that end of the Cleveland series or the beginning of the Boston Red Sox series at home. So James makes it sound, Jim, that Jonathan Cannon shouldn't be concerned about making the opening day rotation. But should we be concerned about the performance that Cannon is having this spring? Because even though the White Sox are downplaying the results are 11 and a third innings, 22 hits allowed, 13 earned runs, 4 home runs allowed. He's hit 3 batters. He's walked 3, and it's only 7 strikeouts. Opposing batters are hitting .415 off of Jonathan Cannon. This is one of those performances in spring training that you hope was so bad that there's no way it could carry over and we could all laugh it off, as James mentioned, Jim, in June if Cannon's having a solid season. But this has not been a very promising spring training for Jonathan Cannon.
I think with Cannon's profile, there's a general sense of, there's a little bit of interpretation of just what you think of him, because big imposing righty, but doesn't miss a ton of bats and is constantly adjusting his arsenal, which is either a sign of adaptability or a sign that he doesn't exactly know what works for him. And so it's just a matter of, will he always kind of be scrambling or tinkering? And will he just be, instead of going from like 4th starter to 3rd starter, is he going to go from 4th starter to 5th starter because of just the tweaks never quite, click for him. And he's just always searching. I think that's my sense of him. And I guess why I was a little bit cooler to him as a prospect than James was last year, like in our rankings, just seems like he's just always trying to find what's working for him. And so that's why I think if he comes out of the gate and, I don't think it's going to be this bad in April, but say like it's just unimpressive, like 5 to 6 ERA or worse, kind of he's struggling to get through 4 innings. Yeah, perhaps he can be bumped down to Charlotte's. Perhaps somebody like Nick Nastrini comes up if he's looking good. But I mean, right now with just I think Mason Adams, especially since he had that flexor strain and is out of the mix, there's not a whole lot of early depth to want to rush towards. Nastrini, you never know with him. Iriarte is not there yet. They have like Justin Dunn's having a nice spring, but I don't think you want Justin Dunn to be your April savior. So I think I just had to keep an open mind. It's a long season. Mm-hmm. We saw last year Cannon get optioned down and then come back, just have a real rough patch that he was able to fix up in Charlotte and was fine the rest of the season. So it may always be a little bit of hot and cold with him. And so that I'm not too concerned right now, but I think having the form of Cannon, the last 2 months of last year, where he's pretty reliable for 5, 6 innings. The White Sox could really use that guy. And if he's not there, I think you'll just feel it in terms of some games being more of a slog. And then they're hoping that, Burke holds up or Martin holds up. If he's not the anchor piece, that's like, one of those setbacks that could maybe have the White Sox being harder to top their very meager win projections right now. What's the line right now? Is it so for 53 or?
Yeah, for sports books, it's 53.5.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, that's the kind of thing where, if, Cannon is not the reliable mid-rotation starter they thought he was, then puts pressure on the bullpen, creates kind of a cascade thing. And so, like, that's, I think, the tough part. But I think it's pretty easy right now giving him starts and seeing when the season rolls around, cold weather shows up, pitching or friendly conditions, he might be fine.
And I will admit to implicit bias to as a beat writer of a starting pitcher in the rotation who is changing his arsenal so constantly that I have a story every week about his new pitch. His disordered mind was appealing to me in a way I must admit.
Wednesday night, March 26th, will be Opening Day Eve, co-hosted by Sox Machine and our friends from the 108 at the Ramova Theater. Come join us as we get ready for another season of Chicago White Sox baseball, or at least pretend to be excited. Special guests include Jim Callis of MLB.com, as he'll talk about the top White Sox prospects and answer your questions live about the farm system. Courtney Finicum of Baseball is Not Boring podcast. She stole the show last year and is ready to dish her predictions for 2025. Jim Margulis and James Fegan will have a live PO Sox segment to answer questions from the audience, and our friends from the 108 will close out the show by making their very wild and entertaining predictions, including the famous steak dinner bet between Beefloaf and I. Tickets are just $20, doors open at 6 p.m., and the show will start at 7:30 p.m. Purchase your tickets at RamovaChicago.com or in the ticket link in this podcast post on SoxMachine.com.
Have you experienced serious complications with the Paragard IUD, like breakage or fracture? You're not alone. Keller Postman is here to help. Tap the banner now for a free case review. We're helping women hold manufacturers accountable. If eligible, you may be entitled to compensation of up to $200,000. Don't wait. Tap now or visit iudinjury.com/audio to see if you qualify. Your health matters, and justice is within reach. Tap the banner or visit iudinjury.com/audio to get started today. This is attorney advertising.
Charlie Heller is the CIA's most brilliant computer analyst, whose life is turned upside down when his wife is murdered in a terrorist attack. Wrought with grief, Charlie decides her killers must pay. Without any field experience, Charlie must trek the globe and use his biggest weapon, his intelligence, to enact his revenge. Because the most unexpected threat is an amateur. Starring Academy Award winner Rami Malek and Academy Award nominee Lawrence Fishburne, The Amateur, rated PG-13. Only in theaters and IMAX April 11th.
Well, that's the starting rotation. We'll get more clarity during the week. Again, James is down in Arizona. Huge thank you to all the Sox Machine subscribers in helping us send James down to spring training twice to cover the action for the Chicago White Sox. He's there for the final week. As we mentioned in our last podcast episode, we'll be sending James to Detroit in April to cover that series, and also Sacramento at the end of April. Can't wait for James's coverage there. And again, you can go to SoxMachine.com to sign up to become a subscriber to gain full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox and Major League Baseball. Injury news. So Jim mentioned Mason Adams. James, let's start there. Is Mason trying to avoid Tommy John surgery? Like, where are we right now with the flexor strain? Do the White Sox have any additional insight to what happened?
They think he should at this point. Flexor strains usually carry around like 6 to 8 week rehab. It obviously depends on severity and how he responds and symptoms and all that. But, his initial comments were that he thought he's out of woods. It's not at least the same kind of uneasiness around like their initial like Orlando Baroa diagnosis.
Right. Yeah, that looked bad.
Said like, it's a sprain. We're waiting for our next options. And, he asked, like, does this mean he's missed Tommy John? And the answer was kind of like, well, we hope so, and not like, yes. So, I mean, it's fair. Like, obviously, that was still on the table, right? Because that's what ended up happening. So, I feel like it's a little bit rosy with this. It's something more specific. But obviously remains to be seen. We've seen like anyone can reel off like bad scenarios of how this has gone of like, oh, he tried to come back and re-aggravated it and something, blah, 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 blah. But we're not there yet, at least where you can still kind of have the hope for him being depth at some point. But I think, especially given the fact that he hadn't really pitched at AAA very much, nature of his stuff, kind of like as a track record guy more than you see it once and it blows you away. It just for me makes it a lot more likely that we see him in the second half than first half, I would think.
Got it. So the next guy on the list is Josh Rojas. What's going on with his is it the big toe? Like what's going on here?
It's his right big toe. He got slid into. I don't know if real webcast viewers saw it, but it's a little reminiscent of the Tim Anderson, Matt Wallner play. God, how many years ago was that? 10, 1? I don't remember. But without the Hanser Alberto throw parted, but just kind of a bang bang play, and the guy slid into his foot as he's trying to like make the play on the bag. Initially it was a sprain, but Will Venable said today being Monday in Arizona time, probably Wednesday in Chicago time, that he has a hairline fracture in his right big toe. But he didn't put a timeline on it. He said, one, Brooke Fletcher from CHSN saw him in a walking boot. So that kind of prompted the question for a follow-up. And they didn't put a timeline on it. They said it's threshold, but obviously it's about his pain threshold if he can play through it. Said he can't get worse from running around. Seems like it was kind of a, blunt force injury as opposed to like a, stress buildup type of injury. So they didn't think they think he can play on it, so to speak, but it'll be painful. And right now it's too painful for him to kind of walk. But like theoretically, the idea that he's still available or possible for opening day would be probably him playing through a very sore foot then, but ideally not compromised for his mobility too much because it's a glove dependent player. Probably wouldn't start on opening day normally, given that it'd be left on left against Yusei Kikuchi. Seems like we don't want to base this decision just on the first game matchup, even though like it's funny because we think of opening day starter as like this huge like title that you hold on your team, and then having the pitching coach like, yeah, we like the splits against righties, so that's why we're giving him this honor that will be recorded in franchise history forever. Just like Dane Dunning playoff starter. So it kind of remains to be seen like how soon is he out of the walking boot. It's a day-to-day thing in terms of how it progresses, but it doesn't come with the same Andrew Benintendi here. It's supposed to take 4 to 6 weeks. And so thus that at least gives you kind of an expectation of how much they're bending it when they do try to rush him back sooner. But hopefully it's a very hairline fracture because that sounds like a lot to deal with. That sounds like something that we could be talking about in June of, hey, why did you have a slow start? Well, I think the soreness of the broken toe maybe wasn't the greatest. So speaking of Benintendi, you mentioned batting practice. He's actually been hitting for a bit longer than that. What he did on Monday with his hand was face live pitching for the first time. And building quickly upon that, he's supposed to DH on Wednesday. So his level of like in the Cactus League game. So his level of trying to really play for opening day, very serious, though. As much as he kind of said like he thinks timing just comes from what he's doing right now, continues to see pitching, he thinks it's something he can work through, and is optimistic that he can get in a good place swing wise in 10 days, and that his swing works. He did acknowledge like he is still feeling pain in the hand when he does it, and that as far as like feeling totally discomfort free, that's probably going to be on the 4 to 6 time that he's been told that the bone is healed. He can't re-injure it. It's not like vulnerable, but it does seem like trying to make that happen in terms of the opening day is probably going to lead to playing with some soreness. Now, I think we all naturally be like, why would you play with soreness? Is he giving you less than 100%? He's just going to put up bad numbers. This is self-defeating. I do have to stress, baseball players view playing through pain, playing through soreness, playing through minor injuries as like an extremely normal thing. And that's something that they're often doing and maybe even doing well, and at times that the public is not privy of it. So I know it's a big disconnect between players and fans, that it's like we're watching the horror movie and they're going downstairs like over and over again, despite no one coming back up from the basement. But they view it as a much more like, you don't even know this time that I played with this chip thing, this chip thumb for 3 months and hit 10 bombs or something like that. So it does raise concern. It is something that I think players view a lot differently than us. And so we kind of have to adjust our expectations a little bit accordingly, while still feeling the same requisite amount of dread that you would feel for a White Sox player going down the basement.
Got it. All right, Jim. That's a lot as far as injury updates. We're not going to host a candlelight vigil for Mason Adams, but we are hopeful that Adams does return to throwing at least sooner than later, because I was excited to see what he would be doing in Charlotte, because the White Sox are going to have at least 10 guys make starts for the White Sox in 2025. I expected Adams to be one of them. Can he be a guy? I don't know. And it sounds like that's going to be delayed. But Josh Rojas and Andrew Benintendi, two veterans here. Let's start with Rojas, Jim. If Rojas can't go for the opening homestand, again, it's 3 games against the Angels and 3 games against the Minnesota Twins. What does this infield really look like? I know we just had the podcast episode, what the White Sox are doing at shortstop. Are we looking at Andrew Vaughn at first, Lenyn Sosa at second, Jacob Maya at short, and Miguel Vargas at third, with Rojas being maybe out for the opening homestand?
Yeah, it feels like every podcast, that list of 6 that you had is just going to keep being reduced. Yeah, just be, but by the end, there will be no choices. It'll be whoever's around and healthy will be playing. So why even bother having this conversation? Let's move on. Yeah, it's, while James cautioned against, the dread and just, overplaying or overreacting to soreness, my thought was like, Josh Rojas is Jeff Keppinger over again. Like just the guy with, enough power to be okay for multiple offensive positions, but like can't afford to lose a lot before he's, below average for even like a second division team. He walks a little bit of a fine line there for what the White Sox are hoping for. Keppinger had the offseason injury with the broken leg, and then that turned into a shoulder issue, and then he never had power or anything like that. And it turns out teammates didn't like him either. So I think that's just my concern, is like having seen Benintendi with the wrist issue, coming back from the or I should say the Hammett issue, and, struggling with it for most of the year. Just when it comes to guys who don't really sting the ball, like anything that reduces like their base or their wrist, their snap is just like that gives me a little bit of caution. But I would hope at least that it wouldn't affect Rojas. I think his most important contribution is going to be defensive stabilization, either at third or second. And so, with him, if he's not hitting, he'll still have use being plugged in at third, second, occasionally short. But yeah, I think initially it opens it up for Mydroth, Brooks Baldwin, although he keeps playing outfield. So it doesn't seem like the White Sox really want him there. Yeah, I mean, not a whole lot of clarity. So I think ideally they would have probably, it seems like they're giving Mydroth some run at shorts, and then, Rojas at second with Sosa there. But yeah, I think it's going to be, if it's Vargas at third, Mydroth at short, and Sosa at second, like, man, that is, that's the case of just, start being high ball pitchers. Just start lobbing
ball in air
pitches all the time. Just try to get some weak fly balls, because grounders are going to get through.
Pitching, taking my advice, ball in air. No longer applying to White Sox hitters.
Throwing underhand.
Good Lord. Well, the White Sox haven't had the best of luck with players rushing back. So we'll see what happens with Josh Rojas. Again, more clarity this week. James will be on it on SoxMachine.com. And we'll be tracking how Andrew Benintendi does. Would be interesting because the White Sox did sign Travis Janikowski to a minor league contract, maybe helping out to be part of the White Sox opening day. Bench option for the White Sox to be that 5th outfielder. They do want to carry 5 outfielders, as we haven't got an update on Austin Slater. Have we, James? Any clarity there?
He was also taking live VP, but
Okay.
that we don't have a projection for first like spring game the way like we have Benintendi playing on Wednesday.
Got it. All right. So let's go to a more fun topic here. It is St. Patrick's Day as we are recording this, and we all hope, especially for those in Chicago, that you had a wonderful St. Patrick's Day weekend, especially in the South Side. If you went to the South Side Irish Parade. For this, if I can grant you one player on the White Sox, either from the position group or pitcher, just one, to add 50 points to either their weighted runs created plus or ERA plus in 2025, who would it be? And Jim, I'll start with you. Given that luck of the Irish, who would you give a big boost in production for the White Sox this season?
I think it would have to be Luis Robert, just
Okay.
because of one, the entertainment value. Like when he's hot, and crushing 450-foot homers, or has the full capacity of his legs. Like he is a lot of fun, and having that presence in the middle of the order, like even in say like if they're losing games 10-5, like if he's driving in 3 runs and hitting 113-mile-per-hour line drives, like at least fans came to the park and they saw something. So it's not it's not a case of like, why did I come here? It's like, I saw a great ball player do cool things, which I think is really what a lot of fans are hoping to see over the course of the season. Just highlights, reasons to be excited, and he provides that. Also, if he rediscovers that form, for the first half, then all of a sudden, like the trade value shoots through the roof. Like, the Chris Getzel like completely validated for not entertaining any offer led by like a number 3 starter. Like that's a case where just his the club options become automatic. Every team should be lining up to get in on it that has ambition, and the market becomes a lot more competitive. So I think there are arguments for like, prospects like Colson Montgomery doing that. Like, it would be cool. But I think in terms of just what immediate production turns into, like helping the team more, I think Robert getting that boost from just, what he can bring back and what he can add to this, kind of thin, especially on the position player side, depth chart would be pretty immense.
Zips is projecting a 107 weighted runs created plus. So Jim giving that luck of the Irish to Luis Robert, 157. Last year, Gunnar Henderson had the 8th best weighted runs created plus for qualified hitters at 155. So that would make Luis Robert a top 8 hitter, at least a top 10 hitter in Major League Baseball in 2025. Yeah, that would be awesome. And he'd be gone by the All-Star game. James, how about you? If you could give a 50-point boost to someone on the White Sox, who would you give it to?
What do you view as my selection criteria here?
View as your selection
What ends am I
criteria.
trying to achieve? Am I trying to better the White Sox, or am I trying to amuse myself?
How about let's go amuse yourself? What would make you happier as someone covering the Chicago White Sox as a beat reporter?
I mean, the league recently took something from Andrew Vaughn, 2 things, namely, and I think it'd be good for him to get some sort of compensation for it.
What did they take away, James? Go ahead,
It,
share that news.
it took away 2 inches off his listed height with the ABS
I'm glad you
measurements.
mentioned his listed height. If you just left it off, they just took 2 inches off of Andrew Vaughn. That could go sideways. We're not from the 108 podcast, James. We don't talk about that type of stuff on this show.
Took
But
his,
I'm glad you mentioned that.
his
Yes, he
luscious
is
head of
now.
hair down 2 inches.
He's down to 5'10".
Brian Ramos, that would obviously further my agenda that he's like criminally overlooked, which is not aided by him being hurt and getting scant DH at bats at the end of spring training. Um, but I think for maximum chaos, a situation where I'd really love to see the city brought to heel, forced to acknowledge their new ruler, Lenny Sosa, going like turning into like what it would be like a 135 like monster. Um, that would be incredible to witness. I would love the like all the new media attention, the TV reporters pretending that they knew like who Lenny Sosa was like previously.
It would tear your family apart, right?
It would tear my family apart. That would be fun, you know. You're not allowed to like say you enjoy chaos without getting your hands dirty a little bit. Like arguing with your parents about where on the infield Lenny Sosa fits. But yeah, I think that would be one like we talk about how wide open this infield is right now. Like we don't know who the future like second baseman of the White Sox is. We don't really know like who the long-term third baseman is. We don't know any long-term like position player really. So I think it'd be interesting like what sort of what sort of chaos it would wreak on just like what the White Sox do. Like you have a guy with a lot of control left who's settling like an all-star caliber bat. Do you push aside like your first round picks who might be pushing for spots in the infield, like Jacob Gonzalez down the road alongside Colson, and the fact that if does Lenine become the everyday third baseman, Miguel Vargas that's thrown us under? What would like one of these guys who are seemingly have no edge amongst each other suddenly becoming elite due to like plans that probably tilted more around guys they had acquired this new front office since then. So I think I've got Jim's gears turning, so I'll turn it over to him.
You know who would be very funny in this scenario? Corey Lee.
He's having that sort of camp.
Yeah. But just all of a sudden he's at 130 WRC plus catcher. Kyle Teal and Edgar Carroll are now pointless in the organization. Like all-star offense, league leading pop time. Walker McKinven turning him into a passable framer.
Yeah, then he's like a 5-win player. And these useless catching prospects.
Okay, I'm changing my answer. Corey Lee.
I like it. kind of along the same vein. My pick would have been back to James though. Lenine Sosa. If Lenine Sosa puts up a 136 weighted runs created plus type of season in 2025, the Lennonites will be rallying big time. We would need to make that shirt for them so they could all recognize one another. The true believers of Lenine Sosa, sticking with Lenine Sosa through the thick and thin, that would pay off big time for them. I'm going to pick Miguel Vargas. The White Sox have some control with Vargas. He's having a good spring. Zips thinks on the weighted runs created plus side, Zips is projecting Luis Robert to be at 107, also projecting Miguel Vargas to be 107. So if I have this magic, this leprechaun magic to give a huge boost in production, if you give it to Miguel Vargas, I don't know if he's still going to be something you can count on in third base, but the White Sox also need someone that could anchor this lineup, especially in the middle of the order, especially after you trade Luis Robert, because I don't know who that is in the near and long-term future for this organization. It'd be nice if Miguel Vargas could step up and, I mean, hell, that would be what, a Carlos Quinn type of season? Just break out and hit like 35 home runs? That's exactly what the White Sox need in 2025 if they're going to have this huge boost of luck going into this season. So I got Miguel Vargas. Jim changed his pick to Corey Lee because he just wants absolute chaos, especially on the roster side. If that happened, I could not wait until the offseason to see what the offseason plan projects are. Because, Jim, everyone would advocate to trade Corey Lee. This can't happen again. It's not repeatable.
I'm just picturing Chris Getz at the deadline trading Luis Robert for like Drake Baldwin.
Okay.
Like 4 catchers,
keep stacking.
5 catchers, 6 catchers.
What if the whole roster was catchers?
Exactly.
Gold. He said it.
Yep.
And you have too much gold.
I will say, like, Miguel Vargas for you furthers your anti-Andrew Vaughn agenda because he slides
Sure
over the first and just makes him a memory. Like, it's I see where you're coming from here.
Well, I mean, this is a big season for Vaughn. You could easily pick Vaughn. Zips kind of likes Vaughn still. 110 weighted runs created plus. If Vaughn was 160, he'd be one of the best hitting first basemen in all of Major League Baseball. I would still move him over to DH, but there's a big price tag for Andrew Vaughn with another year of arbitration coming up. He's $6 million now. He could be $8, $9, $10 million going into next season. So with the White Sox being cost conscious right now when it comes to roster building, this is a pretty big season for Andrew Vaughn when it comes to his wallet. So Jim, I'll switch your pick for you. I like it. He's got Corey Lee for Maximum Chaos. James is picking Lenine Sosa, and I am picking Miguel Vargas. Let us know in the comments section or hit us up on social media who would be your pick to give a 50-point boost on this St. Patrick's Day for better luck in 2025, either White Sox position player or White Sox pitcher. Some fun topics. Joey Gallo, the pitcher. Okay, James, how does this work for Joey Gallo now that he is no longer going to be in the outfield? He's cut by the White Sox, did not have a good spring training at all. Does he have to go to like independent baseball now to prove himself as a pitcher?
Not necessarily. Like if he wants to like train at some, well-known facility and throw pens and, develop pitches and invite scouts out to see him throw, that's probably a viable way. I mean, he's a Boris client. They could probably get some teams out if he really got himself up to some sort of pro level. But I mean, we kind of asked Ethan Katz about him in passing, and like Katz hadn't seen him pitch. And from what I heard, like that video that had him like throwing in a White Sox uniform was just like Gallo filming himself throwing in lone on like a bullpen. So like as far as like something that the White Sox are deeply involved in, like he from the sound of it, like he kind of understood. He had expressed some interest in pitching, and like some people had heard it, but the release kind of came about from just the general veteran on NRI who's struggling. Like, hey, how is it looking like I'm not going to make the team? No, and if not, he asked for his release. And it doesn't seem like they really like gave a super strong consideration to him pitching here, and I get it, and it's something I rant about a lot, but like ever since the new CBA and the head counts on minor leaguers, like you don't have the room for the 31-year-old outfielder decides he wants to pitch spot on your organization anymore. Like that's not a very like proven commodity is something worth investing in taking a spot from an actual prospect for.
Mm-hmm.
So like you're not going to see hey, let's let Mitch Mustaine pitch an A ball for a little bit kind of like deals anymore. So I especially since Gallo, we don't really know. And, just even chatting with Katz, like he didn't know because it wasn't really like something that's being discussed as part of the roster picture as they're getting ready for the season. Obviously, he's like, he's got to get on a throwing program. He's got to like train for it. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. I don't know if it's a famous story, but like the story about like Matt Davidson was like, after one or two appearances, there was a lot of enthusiasm when he did. And then when they started having him do it, like, I think he pitched like twice a week or back-to-back weeks. He's like, I'm really sore. I don't know if I can do this for a while. Like I trained up as a hitter. Like there's a lot of stuff that, spring training is really the length of it is for pitchers. Like the build up, the training program you have to go through, we don't even know like if he can spin a slider or throw a changeup. Like it's such like a theoretical concept at this point that what it entails, like, yeah, could independent ball be what he does? Sure, that's one of the routes. I don't think he has to throw independent ball. I think he probably has to do a lot more between where he's at now, just wanting to try it, and even a minor league deal to, hey, come to spring training or be an extended spring, or maybe we'll get you into a complex league game. I think he has to build up a lot more from where he's at, probably at a private training facility and really pursuing this if he wants to. But I think it's a kind of weeks to really months long process before he'd be ready to pitch in a pro game, even like in a complex league game or in a bridge league game at the end of the summer. So from a White Sox perspective, it's kind of like, hey, good luck. That sounds great, but we're totally not in the same universe right now. We're about to start a season in weeks, even on the minor league side, and you are starting a whole new journey in your career that
Right.
hey, keep our number, but we're not like entertaining this right now. We're not like, well, we were deciding between Taylor or Gallo for the Birmingham rotation, and we're gonna go Gallo. What the hell? Like,
Let's sell some tickets.
Yeah, I think with Gallo, he could join that Marlins practice team. Like that sounds like the perfect opportunity for him. I mean, it kind of works, but no, it reminded me a little bit of like Brian Anderson after the White Sox traded him to the Red Sox, and he kind of bounced around, I think, for a year, and then he like tried to switch to pitching like rather abruptly. He probably had a few more ups and downs as like a fifth outfielder for teams because of his defense, but he just abruptly changed to pitching. And I'm looking at his Baseball Reference page now, and it wasn't bad. Like I thought it was like a mistake, like just an out mistake, but like he performed at A and Triple A. He just didn't pitch much, probably for what James said in terms of preparation, being able to actually throw the innings. Like he struck out 17 over 17 innings, only 15 base runners, like over the course of his body of work. Like it was fine. Like that wasn't bad, just couldn't pitch. And so, yeah, I think that's what's kind of, I think, surprising about this. I think it reminded me a little bit of the, Ethan Katz talking about like, whether he heard of it. Reminds me of like Sergio Santos telling me about his, the deal he had with the White Sox, and that like the White Sox, when they said, we're going to release you, but like, if you want to pitch, we have dibs. And like he had a deal with the White Sox. Like I think he tried one more, I think it was the Giants, gave playing shortstop one more chance in spring training, didn't work, and then they traded him back to the White Sox. And so then he embarked on his like fast tracking through relief, and that actually worked for him. But like that's so rare, I think, just having that kind of pretty much perfect outcome for just everything going right in one minor league season, then having like a great major league season, and then he blew out shortly after that. But it's a tricky road, and it just seems like he has nothing to lose. Probably scratches an itch in terms of like, I wonder how my stuff would hold up if I, just put all my concentration into throwing 94 from the left side. Like, could I do it? And then if it doesn't work out, like, all right, I tried. It strikes me more of him like indulging some curiosity versus actually being a viable path. And yeah, I mean, if he wants to play for if he wants to just go to independent ball and, whether it's like, the Chicago Dogs or Newark or something like that, and just try to have some moments. Cool. Like, I think it'll be interesting. I just hope he actually pitches versus realizing like after a couple of games, like can't do it, because that's always just a bummer.
Yeah. It sounds like he's trying to hold on, because with the White Sox losing 121 games, you're striking out 52% of the time in spring training. If you can't make the 121 loss White Sox team, there's no team in Major League Baseball that's going to pick you up right now.
Nick Senzel going to Mexico.
Yeah, Senzel's going to Mexico to try to keep the career going. So if Gallo thinks he can pitch, and being a Scott Boras client, if he gets that opportunity to build it up, I don't know. If he signs with the Chicago Dogs, you're going to force me to go up to Rosemont, Jim, and see how Joey Gallo does?
No, I mean, like, had he played any major league games with the White Sox, maybe, but he, it's really hard to consider him a White Sox after 21 plate appearances or whatever it is in spring training. It doesn't quite resonate the same. But yeah, if you wanted to go and check it out, sure, go for it. But
was it Courtney Hawkins that was crushing for the Chicago Dogs?
Keon Barnum, right?
Barnum won an MVP.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, Keon Barnum.
They're both
Courtney Hawkins was Sugarland. I think that he went to same league, I think, or same level of ball, but I think he was with Sugarland.
And the Middle East League, the Abu Dhabi League, Courtney Hawkins is part of. That I do know, because our friend down in Melbourne, Australia, AJ Mithen, tags me when he gets highlights on how Courtney Hawkins is doing. So, guys, still trying to continue the journey, continuing the dream.
Baseball's normal. Shipped to Abu Dhabi.
He's only 31 years old.
And MLB news, like I mentioned in the intro, by the time you're listening to this, maybe the game's already over or watching. Opening day for Major League Baseball starts on March 18th in Tokyo, Japan. The Los Angeles Dodgers against the Chicago Cubs. Tuesday at 5 a.m. Central Time on Fox. You'll have Yoshinobu Yamamoto against Shota Imanaga in the opening game between the Cubs and Dodgers. And then on Wednesday morning at 5:10 a.m. Central Time, this game is going to be on Fox Sports 1 where Tuesdays on Fox, Dodgers, Roki Sasaki will make his first major league start, and the Chicago Cubs will have Justin Steele. How do you feel about this series? It's 2 games. So you got 3 options, Jim. Dodger sweep, split, Cubs sweep. If you had to make a prediction, what would be your prediction out of those 3 options?
Let's say Cubs sweep, just because it's early. Like, it's too early for regular season baseball. I mean, I like the idea of the series. I'm not against it, but it just doesn't quite feel like real baseball yet. You go to play overseas, and then you come back and it's still spring training and just a little bit weird. So I'm going to just chalk it up to weirdness and say like the weird outcome will happen.
Do you want the White Sox to ever participate in something like this, either in opening day in Tokyo or in Australia?
Absolutely. I wish they were relevant enough to actually like make it happen. And like, it's going to be cool to see, the all Japanese, starting pitcher duel, and then having Ohtani there. Like, crowd's gonna be awesome. The White Sox really haven't been relevant in the Japanese market, even the Korean market, if they have played a game in Seoul or something like that. So it's not for them, but it would be cool because having seen a game in both countries, I highly recommend anybody who ventures over there to do so, because it's just a whole different atmosphere, a whole different way to appreciate the game, a whole different sound. It's a whole different feel. And I would very much like to write about it and have it be the team that we write about, versus like just me being like, I'm going to just write about the Dodgers for a couple days, because maybe it's a good business plan, but it would be more trenchant to be a White Sox actually involved doing it.
Are they having the London series this year, or are they skipping this year?
Thought they were.
No, they are not.
Oh, okay.
The league and
in favor of their Racetrack America game or whatever.
Something like that, yeah. The league and the city of London have agreed for teams to come back in 2026.
Okay.
Oh, Major League Baseball is trying to have a game in Paris this year. That fell through. Never mind. So no London games in 2025. London will come back in 2026. James, how do you feel about the opening series between the Dodgers and Cubs out of those 3 options? So Jim's got a Cubs sweep, being aggressive. How do you think these 2 games will play out?
Legendary former Merkin intern Fabi Nardaya, who covers the Dodgers for The Athletic, tweeted out their opening day roster. And as a result of looking at it, I'm going to have to say Dodgers sweep. This Dodgers injuries list would be like probably the best bullpen in the AL Central. Like Tony Gonsolin, Brewster Gratterall, Michael Grove, Eduardo Enriquez, Kyle Hurt, who just won like the Cy Young MVP in the KBO last year, like Eric Fetty, Clayton Kershaw, Michael Kopech, Evan Phillips, Emmett Sheehan. Can you imagine the Sox rolling out a bullpen as talented as the Dodgers injured list? Mwah, an incredible collection. They're loaded, man. They're really good. Like I try not to give into doomerism, like, oh, the Dodgers are so good. They're like constantly trying to win. They're ruining the sport. It's such a shame. The league should do something. Why can't they outlaw being good at player development? Blah, blah, blah. I don't like to give into that. But then you look at it on paper, and it's like, well, that is really good. They probably should win. Like, they probably won't sweep because baseball's hard and weird and inconsistent and erratic. But like, they're definitely good enough to roll over teams. And the Cubs kind of weirdly crap out all the time. So why would it happen at the start of the season in a foreign country with Shohei Ohtani hitting a home run every time up? So we'll see. Probably won't do that, but people pointing out that even the MLB IL list for the Dodgers doesn't have River Ryan on it. Their minor league injured list is loaded as well. Just the most beautiful injured list in baseball, alongside everything. So I'd have to lean to them. They're just too powerful.
How loud does it get in the Tokyo Dome, Jim? Because I'm imagining against in that first at bat, Ohtani against Imanaga. If Ohtani takes Imanaga deep, it'll be like an explosion, right? 50,000 in the Tokyo Dome.
Yeah, I think it can. I think there are louder places. I think I read
Okay.
that, because just the acoustics are a little bit weird, that it can get loud, but often can be silent. And often with both in Japan and South Korea, like the sides take turns. Like it's very much like if your team is hitting, you're the side of the crowd making noise. If your team is not hitting, then you defer. And then just, unless a play is made or something like that, then applause. But it's just tends to be one side, and then other kind of like listening to with headphones and turning the channel up on one side, then turning the channel down. Like that's kind of how it is. So I think it kind of defaults, from what I read, to being quieter than you think until something happens. And then, then all hell can break loose.
Well, old friend Jason Benetti and AJ Brzezinski will have the call Tuesday morning. So just in case, if you're listening to this shortly after midnight, as the podcast uploads into all of the players, you can listen to this episode and watch this episode before Dodgers and Cubs. But if not, you'll be able to see who is more likely to be on track with their correct prediction: Jim with the Cubs sweeping, or James with the Dodgers sweeping. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. As Jim mentioned earlier, Sox Machine 3.0 is live. Please support us. For our monthly supporters on Patreon, that no longer exists. Go ahead and re-enter your information and update your payment information on soxmachine.com, as we got rid of that third party. For our annual subscribers, you should be taken care of. If you need more help, there will be communication sent out to you via email. You can also reach out to us directly via email as well. You can get those emails on soxmachine.com. If you just discovered the Sox Machine podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You could also listen and watch the show on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. You can follow us on all the social media platforms, such as Blue Sky and Instagram. White Sox Food Day is going to be on Wednesday, March 19th. I'll have a lot of photos and videos from that event on Wednesday morning. I'll post those on our Instagram. You can follow us at Sox Machine. Also follow James on Instagram at JR Fegan. He's been posting pictures and videos from White Sox spring training camp. If you want full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox and Major League Baseball, and ad-free versions of the podcast and even our YouTube videos in the future, sign up at soxmachine.com to be a supporter. Monthly plans start at $5, and you get the ad-free versions of both the podcast and the website. We also have additional tiers of support. We have some openings in our Veterans Committee, so if you'd like to be in a group chat with James and Jim and get all the gossip and whispers that's happening from the White Sox clubhouse, reach out to us. Go to soxmachine.com and sign up for the Veterans Committee. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of soxmachine.com. You're on for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis and James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.
Have you experienced serious complications with the Paragard IUD, like breakage or fracture? You're not alone. Keller Postman is here to help. Tap the banner now for a free case review. We're helping women hold manufacturers accountable. If eligible, you may be entitled to compensation of up to $200,000. Don't wait. Tap now or visit iudinjury.com/audio to see if you qualify. Your health matters, and justice is within reach. Tap the banner or visit iudinjury.com/audio to get started today. This is attorney advertising.